Hey, my name is Brianna, and if it's your first time coming to my channel, welcome. I do a lot of mom videos and shopping hauls and then some occasional beauty and vlog videos. But today's video is a collaboration with Jill, and her channel is called Twins and Toddlers. And we are going to be sharing with you the 10 things we'd wish we'd known before delivering our babies. So I have a 1-year-old little boy named Landon, and I had a natural delivery with an epidural. Now I want to make sure I get this right because Jill has 4 little ones under 5. She had 1 induced with an epidural, 1 completely natural with no epidural, and then a C-section for her twins. So all of our labors were a little bit different, so that's why we thought this would be a really fun collab so that you could hear the 10 things I wish I'd known before my natural labor with an epidural, and there was no inducing or anything of that sort. And then you can hear from her the 10 things she wished she knew before her 3 very different labors. So I'll be sure to put a link to her channel and her video in the comments box below, so be sure to check it out. And if you're new, would love to have you subscribe to my channel as well. Okay, let's dive into the 10 things I wish I had known before delivery. Number 1, I wish I had known what a contraction would actually feel like. And I'd read all of these baby books and really tried to get a good idea of what a contraction was going to be like and the level of pain. I had been psyching myself up for a completely natural, drug-free birth. And I will say in the very beginning, the contractions were something I felt I could handle. It felt kind of like a wave of pain, like it would slowly start increasing and reach its crest, and then the pain would diminish. But I would say by the time I finally got my epidural, I was in so much pain. I mean, it knocked the wind out of me. I couldn't breathe. Looking back, I'm sure if I'd had to have done it without an epidural, I could have, but the epidural definitely helped. So number 2, an epidural does not mean that you are weak. So I think I'd said to my husband, who was my labor coach, you have to psych me up, like talk me through the pain, don't let me get the epidural, make sure that I stick this out. And looking back on it, we were in such a high stress mode. My husband wasn't giving me that indication at all. He was honestly the best labor coach, but after I got the epidural and I calmed down and I was breathing and I was no longer in pain, he even said to me when we reflected on it after, I was so happy when you got the epidural, because inside he was freaking out. He was so terrified for me and the pain I was going through, and just the fact that I usually am in like a pretty in control mental state. It's just my personality. I'm type A and I take charge. When I was in labor and in that amount of pain, I was losing it. At one point I was even like, this is not normal, this cannot be normal, something's wrong. And he was holding it together. But inside he said once I got the epidural and I returned back to like my in charge and I was much calmer, I even slept for a little bit after I got the epidural, he said it just relaxed him so much. So we actually got to enjoy the end of the labor process so much more because I was calm and not in pain and he could relax and chill a bit. Number 3, you might get sent home from the hospital, especially if this is your first baby. I got sent home, and I think that's what really truly just kicked me into a mental state of being really crazy and out of control. But it's normal to be sent home. Multiple friends and other moms I've talked to said especially when it's their first baby, they were sent home from the hospital. So just be prepared for that. You might go and they might send you back. You might even go 2, 3, 4 times because you're just not quite sure yet what those contractions should feel like to mean that you're really in labor. They might just be a little more intense Braxton Hicks than you've normally been feeling, and you think you're in labor, but it's still Braxton Hicks. So you could be sent home from the hospital at least once, if not a few times. Number 4, I had read in a ton of the baby books that you may bleed the bloody show, they call it, prior to going into labor. But what I didn't know is that you may actually start bleeding during labor. So when I got sent home from the hospital, I had a really tough contraction, and when I talked to the doctor about it at the hospital, she said the contraction was probably when my water did break, But when that really tight contraction happened, there was also like a huge clot of blood that came out, and my husband and I were really, really worried that it could be placenta previa, which is when your placenta comes out prior to the baby, because it was a really, really large clot of blood. And this is like really gross, and might be TMI, but hey, if you're gonna be going through labor, you should be prepared. My husband like took the big clot of blood, because it was probably like this big, and put it in a bag and took it to the hospital to show the nurse, just to make sure that like everything was okay and it wasn't my placenta or anything like that. So first time, you know, you are silly, and again, we were in like this crazy mental state of just not really knowing what to expect. So the nurse said that's completely normal. We didn't have to bring it in to show her. So if you do bleed a little bit during labor after your bloody show, because I already had like the bloody show the day before I actually had Landon, totally normal according to the nurses, but a bit scary, definitely scary. Number 5, you might also throw up during labor. So this was not something that I had expected. Again, in the baby books that I had read, they kind of, you know, went through everything your body might be going through. And after I started having really tough contractions, and this was when we were sent home from the hospital, and after I'd passed like that really large blood clot, I was like vomiting all over the place. So my pristine, put together house that I'd been nesting in for months, I literally had blood, vomit, my water had broke, so it was just like such a messy disaster. So be prepared. Labor will be messy, especially if you are at home and progressing along pretty far. Your house may get a little messy, so just be prepared for that. Number 6, pain medication after you deliver the baby does not mean that you are weak. I am the type of person that always tries to cure anytime I'm sick with like the most homeopathic, avoid medicine. I just want everything as natural as possible. I just don't necessarily trust chemicals or drugs. You hear all these things about people getting addicted to different kinds of medication. So I was, again, trying to do everything as naturally as possible, but truly, like, your body goes through such a significant, like, everything down there is stretched. You might tear. I tore 2 different places. That pain medication was necessary. I was in a really great deal of pain. And I could tell you, I was buzzing the nurse within 5 minutes of when I could take the next dose, because it truly did wear off, and it was like 5 to 10 minutes of being like, oh my gosh, I'm in some significant pain again. Please bring me the medication. I think I needed to take, and again, they've prescribed some pain medication for about 2 weeks after delivery. And I didn't necessarily need it the full 2 weeks, but I would say for at least the first week, I was needing the pain medication. I was like truly in a state of recovery and needed that medication so that the very little that I was sleeping, I could sleep and feel more comfortable. Number 7, this has to do with why you're having that pain. But again, if you deliver naturally, you are in a lot of pain down below in your lady parts. So get a padded seat cushion for your couch or chair or wherever you're going to be sitting, because honestly, you just need that additional layer of comfort. Everything down there is healing, and you're really, really sore and swollen, and again, you're bleeding a lot afterwards. So make sure that you have a nice padded cushion for your seat or your couch or wherever you'll be nursing your baby or feeding your baby. You will enjoy that extra padding just so it doesn't hurt as much to sit down. This leads me to number 8. So I was not prepared for how long I would actually be bleeding after having Landon. And I know that other moms can say like this is really different. Some it's 1 to 2 weeks, so it's just kind of like an extended period. I was bleeding for at least 4 to 5 weeks after having Landon. Now, the first 2 weeks were the most intense, where I had to wear the really huge, like hospital-sized pads, and it's almost like a diaper pad. But after that, I could wear more normal pads, and I would highly, highly, highly recommend getting the ones that are made of pure cotton, like not the ones with like the plasticky kind of coating, because you want everything like airing down there so that you're healing, especially if you tear. But yeah, so for 4 to 5 weeks, I was still bleeding. I would say from weeks 3 to 5, it was slightly more of like a spotty or lighter days of my period, but the first 2 weeks were really intense bleeding. So just be prepared for that. I know for some women it's a lot lighter, but mine was definitely significantly heavy for at least the first 2 weeks and lasted for 5 weeks. Number 9, get really loose cotton, dark colored panties for after you deliver. You will want things because, again, you have a lot of bleeding that will happen. Get dark colors so that you don't have to be worrying about like gross stains, and you'll want them to be loose fitting because you're going to have really large size pads from the hospital, and you don't want anything too tight pushed up against your skin so that everything down there is healing. So loose and dark colored, you will thank me, trust me. We are on the very last thing I wish I had known before delivery. And I knew from watching other moms' videos when they would tell their labor and delivery story that when that moment you meet your baby in the flesh is just so meaningful. But I could not believe that within the second of him being laid on my chest and looking at him and seeing him and going through a rather traumatic experience, my husband and I looked at each other and we were like, we're totally doing this again. Like, within a second, I just knew that like this moment was so magical and so special. And even though labor and delivery is crazy and you never know when it's going to happen, you never know all of the details, what they're really going to be like, but that moment is so amazing. Without a doubt, I know there is a God in that moment because nothing else can explain it. It is the most out of body, closest thing to a miracle I've ever been a part of in my life, and you will want to have a baby all over again because of just how special it is and meeting your little one. And we are so truly blessed. I feel like our labor and delivery experience, again, you never know what could happen, and I feel like it was scary being sent home and the bleeding was scary and it was messy, but we are so blessed to have a healthy little boy at the end of that experience. So again, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you're pregnant with your first and watching this video, or if you are someone who's looking to have a baby and not pregnant yet and just kind of wanting to know more about the experience, leave me any questions in the comments box below. I would be happy to help and give advice to any other mamas or future mamas out there about the labor and delivery experience. And don't forget to check out Jill's channel, Twins and Toddlers. Have a great day.